Welcome back to Behind the Brim, where we go inside the mind of scratch golfers, club champions, and industry experts. Our goal is to uncover insights that'll help you lower your handicap and enjoy the game of golf even more. I'm your host, Cameron Lindsay, and I want to personally thank you for joining us for today's show. If you have any questions about anything you hear or just want to get in touch with us, please reach out at our Instagram, behindthebrim_golf, and we'd be happy to chat. Without any further ado, let's get to today's guest. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Julian Colavecchia. He's a member and 2022 club champion at Markland Wood Golf Club, where he currently holds the all-time scoring record at 4 under par. He's a competitive +2 handicap with designs of taking that even lower. Julian's a sophomore at Chicago State University, where he's posted 2 top 16 finishes in his last 3 NCAA starts. He's also a 4-time junior club champion and 2-time OFSA competitor. Jules has a very thoughtful approach to the game, and I'm excited to unpack his thought process today. It's a real treat to have him with us today. Jules, thanks for joining us on Behind the Brim, brother.
Hey, Cam, thanks for having me. Looking forward to getting into it, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and for our listeners who are tuning in, I like to actually contextualize how I met our guests at this point. So my co-host Chandler, he plays out at Markland Wood where Jules plays. And I've traditionally caddied for Chan in a lot of his club championships. So Jules has always been a feature in those tournaments. And now you're the front runner there. So yeah, you and I met a handful of years ago, and it's been cool to watch you develop from like a small young junior to like now you're an established NCAA competitor. It's pretty neat to see you develop that way, bro.
I appreciate it. Yeah. When I first joined, a bunch of guys just kind of brought me in and played with me, and Chan was one of those guys. And now we get some good battles out there, and I think it's a good group, a good culture, and overall good friendship there made. And meeting everyone's friends like you, and it's been good. So lots of new relationships have been fostered there.
Yeah, hopefully you take it a little easier on him now that you're a stick out on the course. You got to take it easy on the old man.
Yeah, well, I actually had him in the semifinals of the match play bracket last year, and I just wiped him. I played really well, and I think he shot 71 and lost like 3 and 2.
Yeah, it's a tough balance catching your name in the draw. You're NCAA stud. We can't be playing you.
Well, the first guy actually like just withdrew. He called me the night before. He's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to make it."
Yeah, you know what? Maybe a smart decision on his part.
Yeah,
especially what you did in the stroke play club C's. Just how many shots did you win by?
I think it was 26. I forget. I think it was 25 or 26. It was 17 shots after the first round.
That's insane. Well, you've come a long way since the start, Jules, but I always start off these episodes from your end. Like, contextualize for our listeners how you got started in the game of golf. Like, where'd your start begin?
Yeah, so I grew up playing hockey and baseball, and when we got older, the team kind of folded. And one year, my dad said, "Here, you're going to play golf," and I hated it. Like, I threw a fit. I didn't want to play golf. So I guess I went with a couple of my buddies to the old Hit and Giggle at Centennial, in Etobicoke there.
Oh yeah, near my place.
Yeah, and I would just go every day, and I just play and go to the range, and I'd play, and really just like carefree, mindless golf. But I think it was huge for my development because I was kind of just self-taught at the beginning. Just learning. It's kind of like when you're a baby, you start first, you crawl, and then you can finally stand, right? So just being out there exposed to golf, and then next thing, actually making contact, now learning what the game is about. So that's how I started. And then I joined Markland, I think in 2016, give or take. And yeah, here we are. So really enjoyed the ride so far and looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I know just from knowing you personally, like I know you played a lot of hockey when you were growing up, so I think you made the good call in switching over to golf. I think your ceiling was a lot higher with golf than hockey, just given both of our size.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely wasn't going anywhere in either of those sports. That's for sure.
So Jules, you know the drill here on Behind the Brim. We our first section is the report card section where we ask you to grade your game in the 4 areas of driving, iron play, chipping, and putting. Give us a grade A through F in those 4 areas, and then we're going to dive into your 2 strongest areas of your game. So toss it over to you. Let's see how you've done this year.
I'll say overall, my driving I'd give an A. And then irons, I'd give it a C plus. I'd go wedges, an A, and then I'd go putting and chipping would be a B.
Okay, yeah, that lines up with sort of how I understand your game. You're an awesome driver of the ball. Your hands are amazing around the green. So, I mean, let's get right into it, Jules. Let's start with driving. You're like one of the straighter drivers I've probably played with. So give me some of your fundamentals or keys for successful driving.
Yeah, so pretty much everything, not just driver. I always go back to square setup, feeling athletic and square is kind of my main intention there. And then and feeling a nice tempo. So I like to engage with a sensory experience, we'll call it. For example, the Pro Tracer, the Pro Tracer you see on TV. So that's like the go-to. So, for example, stand behind the ball in my think box. I'll make a decision. Okay, cool. I'm going to play it off that cell phone tower behind the green. Nice little draw. And I'll just rehearse it in my think box there with a practice swing to kind of cultivate that trust and commitment. And then I'll take a deep breath, walk into the transition box, into my play box, and just take a rip. So just as soon as I get in that box, I just make sure I'm feeling square and athletic and just really see that draw, just visualize that draw, picture it.
So keys for you, a square setup. So I imagine like neutral alignment, like no lines are crossing, just neutral feet, hips, shoulders, like everything kind of square. Is that what you're getting at?
Yep. And literally just feeling square. And like, it's something simple for me that I can easily get into. And that helps cultivate and provoke that confidence, the trust and that belief.
And how do you practice square alignment? Like, how do you practice the feeling of getting square on the range?
Yeah, so everyone's like, you could feel square, but you may be a bit right, a bit left. So for me, sometimes I'll just set down an alignment stick. I like an intermediate target. I'm a huge intermediate target guy. So I've recently started using that, and I think it's been huge for just my setup. So for example, at the range, let's say I pick a target, then I'll just go in line with that, pick a divot in the ground, or I'll even set a head cover down or a tee just for the purpose of the range session, and then set up square and athletic to that, making sure like I feel like an athlete, just be an athlete, feel square. Then on the course, I got my intermediate target, and it's something very, very close to me. So like I just look down, feel square, bang, look up, see my target, make sure I'm aligned with that, and then fire away.
Yeah, dude, that's something that we've heard from a lot of good players. I'd say the majority of players we've spoken with will pick the target in the distance, and then they'll pick the intermediate target, like something within 2 feet in front of their ball on that same target line. And then as they walk in, they're mindful of like setting the face square to that intermediate target. And then they look up to the big target and set their body square. So I think like the importance of that, in my experience, cannot be overlooked. I'm curious, when you talk about you're really engaged in like a sensory experience, like that shot tracer, the visualization of the shape, when you're actually over the ball and you look up for your final look at the target, are you seeing that shape? Are you like trying to channel the shape that you've planned out?
Yeah. So for example, if that's my intention of Pro Tracer, I like to go through 3, tempo, Pro Tracer, and then the feeling of athletic and square. And like sometimes I'll use all 3, but like really commit to one. So for example, the Pro Tracer is the one. Yeah, like back in the think box, I'm just visualizing that, and that's all I can see. Like sometimes you can close your eyes if that helps, and then I'm just walking in, seeing that Pro Tracer go back and forth, and helps create that visualization that whole way.
And if you go with the tempo feel, because obviously stuff is fluid, what are you looking for? Balance? Are you looking for a certain cadence with your swing? Like, what does tempo mean to you?
So for me on the range, I'll work with the metronome app. It's free on your iPhone or whatever you use. And there's 3 frequencies. So 64 beats per minute would be for your wedges and irons. 62 beats per minute will be for your driver, and 67 beats per minute will be for your putter. And essentially, the philosophy behind that is the longer the swing, the longer the beats per minute. Obvious reasons, it's going to take you more time to get to the ball. So that just helps me dial in a consistent frequency. And when I'm training, I can just hear that the tick tock, kind of like a clock there. And I always get some flack for it because I never bring my AirPods, and it's just on the range blasting, and the whole field's just listening to me get dialed in. But back to your question, yeah, I just on the range feel that nice tempo and kind of sync my body, like prime the system, if you will. And then when I get on the course, it's just not trying to force a repetition, just kind of feeling that sound in your brain and visualizing that in your step, the way you walk into the ball, just a nice cadence, a nice frequency, and overall just a sense of good tempo, good timing, if that makes sense.
Definitely makes sense. So you said 64 beats per minute with the wedges.
Yep.
I believe you said 67 with the putter and 62 with the driver.
Yep. That's
okay.
mine. That's money.
That's interesting. And I you and I have spoken about this before, and I actually went and tried it, and it was neat to see, like, it's very easy to get out of a good tempo, like to get a little jumpy or to get a little quick. Like, for me, it felt like a little bit of a smoother swing than what I'm used to after I tried it once you shared it. So it's something definitely for our listeners worth trying.
Oh, absolutely. And it's just like, it's a nice, easy way where you can create intentionality and an objective in your practice, because so many times you just go hit balls at the range. And it's like, I'm gonna fire 20 balls, like, with no intentionality. But if you want to get better, you got to be deliberate. And I think this is one of those ways you can be deliberate.
Yeah, I mean, you just called out a good rule of thumb there. Like, if someone's warming up before their round of golf, the intention can just be to get warm. Like, you're just kind of loosening your body and you're getting ready to go play, right? And you're getting a feel. But if you're out there practicing, you should be doing stuff with intention, whether it's an alignment stick, working with an intermediate target, working on your tempo with the metronome. Like, there needs to be some sort of intention. It's otherwise you're just really exercising. Like, you're not really getting a lot out of your practice.
Yeah, it's huge. And I'll go back to the whole process. You got to have a process. Like, look at the top competitors in the world. Look at Tom Brady before he goes out and plays a game. When he runs on the field, he does that fist pump or whatever it is, and he screams. Tiger will go to the range and hit a certain amount of balls with each club in that order every single time. Some people will meditate 15 minutes before the round. They'll go to the putting green and then the range, or vice versa. So getting in that process and creating a good routine is huge. That's why I think on the range, that's a good way where you can develop a routine. And then every time you go to the course and you want to play, whether it's competitive or just recreational, you got that process. And then now it's like, all right, I can trust my process. And you're now just managing all the variables in the game.
I love that, man. Give me a drill. I mean, you just gave us the metronome drill, which is fantastic. For tempo, are there any other driver drills that you'll do, or anything you recommend to our listener who might have a little bit of time and want to work on their driver?
Yeah, like, I'm not the most technical player. I'm very, I guess, what would be a good word, holistic, if that makes sense. So I just like to practice as you play, right? And it's harder than it's easier said than done. But when you're practicing, like, the best thing I would say is don't just fire a bunch of balls. Like, place if you're gonna hit 9-iron, hit a 9-iron, go back, go through your full routine, pick your target line, pick your intention, take that deep breath like you would do in the round of golf, step into it, and then commit to it. And then just like even journal it out, like write down your practice plan, what you want to do. With driver in particularly, I would say, like dial in the metronome and then work on mastering like one shot, like just committing to that one shot. It's good to have all the shots in the bag, but like if you heard Max Homa the other day, he goes, like, he doesn't hit draws. Like the longer the iron, the harder it is for him to draw the ball. So just if you master one shot and you're playing a cut and the pin's on the left, just start it for the left. Same thing if the pin's on the right and you're a draw player, start it for the right. So I think whatever you do, you just got to be deliberate with and create that plan.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest themes I'm hearing when talking to other scratch and better players is when they're on the range, they're always intentional with what they're doing, and they always go through their process. Like we're never hearing about guys that are rapid firing balls, and like if you just go down the range of your club, like how many times do you see people just rake ball after ball, and it's almost like they rapid fire 15 or 20, whereas the scratch, like we tend to reset before every shot.
Quality over quantity.
Quality over quantity.
That's the name of the game. And you just want to get quality reps. I'd rather have 10 quality reps before my round of golf than 20 average reps.
Mm-hmm. And I see that when I go to a public range and you see the size of bucket people get, it's like the 150 bucket. You couldn't possibly hit 150 balls like intentionally in an hour's time window. Like I'll get the bucket with like 45 and I'll go through my routine, or at the very least an expedited version of it. Like I'll start from behind the ball and walk in, align myself, set myself square. Like you can't rush that. And that's something that I think can't be overstated in terms of like why I think scratch players take their game to the course a little better, is because like they're practicing, like you said, as they play on the range.
Yeah, exactly. It's wild. Like you can just see people, it's rapid fire out there, and they can't reiterate it enough. Like practice as you play, and you just make sure you're deliberate. That's all I can say about that.
Give me a swing thought. What I know you mentioned you have different feels and intentions, but is there ever a swing thought that you have when you're hitting driver?
Maybe to finish the swing, because sometimes when there's that uncertainty, or for example, if there's a hole that's left to right and doesn't dogleg right, that doesn't suit my draw, or any hole that doesn't suit my eye, or even in with like nerves, it's natural to have nerves on the first tee. I tend to kind of hold it off a bit and not finish my swing. So that's one of the major things there. Just really committing to that, finishing the swing.
That's funny you say that, because I do the same things in tournaments, brother. When I'm under the gun, I have a tendency to make like a check swing. Like I just don't want to like finish and get to my front side. So when I'm nervous, like, or I'm playing tournaments down the stretch, I do the same. I make a more full rehearsal practice swing. I started doing this last year. So I get the feeling of like, all right, this is a full, like, this is what a full swing feels like. And then I go in and I just try to recreate that feel. So maybe a little different approach than you, but I think we're trying to get to the same spot.
Yeah, there's this guy, he wrote a book about Tiger, and essentially I think it's called the Big Miss. And it talks about how when Tiger was seeing Butch Harmon, Tiger's miss was always right, because under pressure he would kind of hold off the driver, and he was afraid of going left. Someone was telling me about that the other day, and it's just like it happens to the best of the world. Those nerves. Obviously, it's a lot different when you're playing for a green jacket rather than a recreational club championship. But that's just what it is. It's like
we're all human.
Exactly, everyone's human, and you're going to experience different levels of emotions and experiences within your experience.
Jules, let's go to the short game. I want to make sure we have enough time to cover everything. Similar approach here. What are some of your fundamentals or keys for successful chipping?
Yeah, essentially just pick a spot. I like to land it to. I used to just chip with my my lob wedge everywhere. But playing different courses here, and 1 week you're playing Bermuda, 1 week you're playing Kentucky Bluegrass, just different terrains. I'm learning how to play every club, so I like to use my 52 or 56 around the green and like play a little bump and run, pick my spot, and just really dial into that feeling of landing it at that spot and creating that pro tracer target attachment, as I stated earlier. That's the keys for me there.
What the way the reason I relate to the way you approach the game so much, Jules, is I feel like it's very similar to the way I approach it in terms of like you want to be more externally focused. Like you want to be more, okay, I use your athletic instincts. This is where this is the spot I want to hit. This is the area I want to hit, and then react to like the target or the spot. Like I think getting outside of your body allows you to like free yourself up and like unlock those athletic like intuitions that you were talking about. So like in terms of picking a spot, are you looking at the size of a scorecard? Are you picking like the size of like a hula hoop? Like how big is this spot that you're looking for?
Yeah, it changes based on the shot for me. I think there's my roommate Kieran. He told me one time, aim small, miss small, and everyone says that, but it kind of changes. Like someday I'll see like a pool, those floaty pools outside in your backyard, or
Yeah.
Or a hula hoop, or like a cardboard box, and just like visualize it just hitting into there, and just really feeling that out and creating that and cultivating that trust and belief in the think box there.
And in terms of like gauging how hard you want to hit the shot, like will you take a couple of practice swings beside the ball to like gauge the lie and the club's interaction with the ground and the resistance of the rough or the fairway? Like, is that something you'll do?
Yeah, I like to feel the grass, especially in grass I'm not familiar with. Like we don't have Bermuda grass in Canada, so wasn't really too exposed to that. So just getting a nice crisp feel when your club hits the grass or the ground, just rehearsing that, and again, fully trusting it, because like I think a lot and sometimes an overthinker, and I feel like if I make a bad practice swing, then I'm gonna kind of, who knows, with the real deal there, but like hit till you're happy. Like I'll get a practice swing, like if I feel like that's it, I'm like, all right, now I'm just gonna commit to that intention.
And so, I mean, I always have to ask about the swing thoughts. For me, I mean, for you, it sounds like there's probably not a lot going on. Is it more so just like no swing thoughts and just a reaction to like hitting a spot as if you were to just like throw a ball into a basket? Like, is that kind of what's going on in your head?
Yeah, so like ever since started working with Coach Carter Golf in Etobicoke there, kind of been getting into the sensory experiences and engaging with something I can control. So if, like, for example, it's the pro tracer, the preloading of the positive emotion, or the target attachment. Like I like to rifle through those three I said earlier. So literally that's all I'm engaged with, like even in the chipping and the putting.
I like it, man. It's simple and like anybody can do it. So you have the target attachment. Obviously, you're focused on your target. You have the sensory experience. You're focused on the flight of the ball. And then what was the third one you talked about? Your tempo?
Tempo. But the thing is, it's like any other skill. Like it takes time to like fully have ownership over it, because if you're not playing well out there, and you have those thoughts that creep in, because that's just what the mind does. That's where there's that uncertainty and that lack of trust, and then that's where you're gonna kind of detach from that and then search for something else. And then when you start searching for something, that's when you kind of go down that rabbit hole there.
What I like about those three, I guess, intentions, or those three like approaches, is it gets you out of thinking too technically on the golf course, and it gets you out of like handcuffing your natural instincts, and it allows you to kind of maybe bring out the feel that you're bringing to the game, bring out like your hand eye, like just your natural athletic instincts. And I think the more we can bring that into golf, like the better we're going to play. Like golf is truly the only sport where, like, think about other sports. It's reactionary. People are throw the ball here, shoot the puck here. Like you bring your best athletic self. But, and you and I have talked about this, but in golf, because it's a static ball game, people all of a sudden, like, they freeze up and they just lose their athletic instincts. And most people have really good instincts.
Yeah, like for sure. It's a still object. So it allows you to be conscious while you're playing. And then when you're conscious, that's when you're thinking. So think of hockey. When you're skating down the ice on a breakaway or you're battling in the corner for the puck, you don't really have that much time to think. So now it's just like muscle memory and just reactionary time there. But in golf, that movement's that ball is like still. So now that's when you can get those thoughts creep in. Like I played with a brain surgeon once, and the guy could barely get off the tee. So it's like this guy has like literally people's lives in his hands, but can't get off the tee. Wow,
dude, it's the old saying, like golf is a simple game that makes smart people look dumb. You know what I mean? Like it's the more we can like there's two phases, and you talked about it, where like in the pre-shot routine, when you're analyzing the shot, it helps to be thoughtful and like cerebral, where it's like you're adjusting your yardage, you're calibrating for wind, you're calibrating for elevation, you're factoring in all these different things. But then when you're over the ball, you almost need to just be a bit of a caveman, like see target, hit target, or like 1-2, as you said, for tempo, like back through. Like you have to, it doesn't really help you to be like super smart over the shot. Which is kind of what you're saying there. Like that brain surgeon is probably one of the smartest people we'll meet. And then it's not serving him over the golf ball.
Yeah, like, well, maybe that's what made DJ so successful. He's kind of like a rock. Just doesn't process emotion or hand out emotion. And he kind of just swings free because there's nothing, there's no thoughts going through his head. And I think that's what everyone's trying to accomplish, is that freedom in the golf swing, where you don't have to steer it. And once you create that freedom and that trust, that will definitely assist you in getting lower scores.
Couldn't agree more, brother. Well, give me a drill or exercise that either you do to work on your chipping or you think others could benefit from working on their chipping.
Yeah, back home in the summer, I like to. You remember Markland's
Of course.
putting on the chipping green? So you got all those pins on those stupid slopes. So literally, I got my collection of balls, and I'll go one long, one medium, one short, and then vice versa, go from the front to the back. And that would be, so all like the three types of practices. You got block, standard, and then I forgot what the other one's called. But anyway, trying to stay away from the block practice in seasons of competition, like emulating what it would be like on the course. So you're not going to have two the same shots in a row, arguably. So when I'm practicing the chipping, usually just chip to the long flag, chip to the medium range flag, and then to the short flag. And then I'll go from the rough, and then a shot where you got to keep it low, a shot you got to go hit it high. Just create the variability. And then at the end of the day, that's what you want to do. You want to become a master of the variability.
And you know what? I'm glad you called this out, because you and I talked about this a couple months ago. I think it was the blocked practice, hitting the same shot over and over, random practice, like moving around and changing the targets and flights like you're sharing. And then I think the third was performance, I believe, right? Or like
I think
more
so.
outcome.
Yeah, it was more outcome. So essentially the block practice, like you said, is you're hitting the same. So for example, if the intention is block practice, you're going to hit nine drivers in a row. That would be block practice. Standardized practice would be like, or randomized, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
The second version would be hitting a driver, then a 7-iron, then a 3-iron, then a wedge. And then the other one essentially is bringing competition into that randomized practice, where you, for example, on the putting green, you set up 10 putts. You can't leave till you make 10 putts, or you can't go to the next location till you make the one that you were at previously. So all those practices are beneficial in their own respective ways.
And that we spoke with a guy who's one of the best. He's one of the best mid amateurs in Toronto, maybe, or in Ontario, excuse me, maybe even Canada. He was top 5 at the Canadian Mid Am a couple of years ago. And he talked about for chipping, he really focused on random practice. He said, like, you see a lot of amateurs like dropping 20 balls and hitting the same chip in a row, and they just kind of get grooved this one little shot that they probably won't see in their next round. And he's like, for him, he works his way around the green, really never hitting the same shot in a row twice. And he also encouraged, like, play par 2s with your buddies, like do a closest to the pin, like, and change the spot all around, because then you're actually getting the skill of like the variable lies, like you said, on the course. So like, I think there's a small space for block practice. Maybe if you're just looking to get some confidence hitting like a simple chip or pitch, but it should definitely not be like your entire practice schedule for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you're working on something technical, the block practice is beneficial. But then when you want to move into that kind of competitive space, the randomized and competitive practice will help you bring that out in a competitive space, like you're going to do on the course. So now training the skill with a result. And back to your point about the par 2s, I think that's a great game, because now you're gamifying your practice, and essentially you're just improving your competitive game. So like Donor knows all about it. Chandler, the par 2s, he always gets waxed. He loves that lob wedge, eh?
Yeah, we've been working with him to try to get him to use more than just the 60, but
Yeah.
work in progress.
Does he still have those high toes?
No, we finally got him away from the high toes. We made sure he's in the Vokies now. Things got dark. We went and played a round with Pete White at Modern Golf over at Credit Valley, it was Credit Valley CV, and the high toes were not performing. So we had to take those out of the bag and get him into some Vokies. He's better now. He's pretty dialed now. I'm not gonna lie.
Hopefully he doesn't get the same draw on the match play like last year.
Well, Jules, I want to, when we spoke before, you shared with me like the way that you typically start your warm up on the range with, I believe it was like some half wedges, some tempo wedges. Can you share with our listener how you start your warm up on the range?
Yeah, so it varies. Like when you're back home playing, it's a lot easier than college golf. In college golf, is literally the range is a disaster. You got maybe 2 spots for 5-6 guys practicing or warming up for the round, and you probably hit 3 or 4. So can't really stay really true to your process or your routine, but kind of abbreviate it. Back home, I like to start off with, actually, I learned this from my roommate. You know how Dave Pulse has his clock circle, his clock method?
Yes.
I started doing a hip to hip, rib to rib, shoulder to shoulder, and ear to ear. It's just an easier way for me to understand, like, this is where I have to bring the club to. Rather than like the clock, it's just like, here's 10 o'clock, here's 6 o'clock. It's just like so simple, hip to hip, and just bring my hands there. And I know that's my 50-yard swing or whatever it is. And then my rib to rib would be like a 70-yard shot. And then shoulder to shoulder is like 85. And then ear to ear would be like a 90-yard shot. So I like to work through that. And then I've always been, it's weird, I always like love my 9-iron. Just I'll pull 9-iron and I'll hit a few shots with 9, and I'll go 7.5. My 3-iron, it's the Stealth UDI, and then I'll move into the woods. And then before I go out and play, whatever the first tee I'm playing, the first hole, I'll rehearse those shots. So I'll go, for example, one at Markland, hit driver, then a wedge, classic.
Or sometimes just the driver if you just throw it on the green, knowing you with
Yeah. Just a nice par 3 to start.
But honestly, brother, I think what you were sharing there around like working through some wedges, hip to hip, rib to rib, shoulder to shoulder, and then ear to ear, which would be probably the full finish. Like, I think there's just so much value in like, and we've heard this from so many guests who talk about hitting like half wedges and 3/4 wedges. Like, if you're able to hit little shots waist to waist or hip to hip, and then rib to rib, and then shoulder to shoulder, and then ear to ear, like your sequencing and your timing and your balance, like everything's going to be pretty synced up. Like if you make full throttle swings, like you can almost like get away with some bad habits because it just is so much speed. But if you're hitting like half shots, your sequencing and your timing almost has to be like perfect. Otherwise, like you get exposed on the contact. So I feel like that's almost a good twofold drill where like you can figure out not only how far those shots go, so you have that point of reference on the course, but you're also like calibrating your tempo and your timing and your sequencing, right? Before you play. Like, would you say it's kind of has like a multiple positive effects?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it helps create that freedom and trust in your decision. It's like now you actually have a set thing to go for, like hip to hip or rib to rib or shoulder to shoulder. So yeah, that's huge. I think you touched all the points there.
I think that's a good place to hop in the 19th hole, brother, where we're just going to ask you like a mix of questions to help color in some of the skills outside of driving and chipping for you. So first thing, it's a little broad, but give me one of the best pieces of golf advice you've ever received.
I'd say listen to the birds. Coach Carter Golf. Essentially, it sounds funny when you say it, but the whole philosophy behind listening to the birds is just like stop and enjoy, and like what is the true reason you're playing, your intrinsic values for playing the game, and just enjoying your process out there.
Sounds like trying to be a little more mindful, be more in the moment, like be having better perspective on the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Like literally go out there and he'll tell me, listen to the birds. Or someone will ask him like, what's the secret? He'll go, listen to the birds. And I think it's great when you think about it. It's like, yeah, literally go and listen to the birds.
So it's kind of like that's a perfect combat for if somebody's like lost in thought in their own head and they're ruminating and they just hit a bad shot and they're berating themselves. It's like if you just listen to the birds, it'll snap you out of that mindless train of thought and get you back into the present moment, right? And into like actually enjoying. Is that some of the reason why?
Yeah, for sure. And it's hard to tell someone to listen up to the birds after they've just made 4 bogeys in a row. And they're really not going to get into that frame of mind right away, because some people need to show emotion, some don't like to. Like, there's no right or wrong. For me, like, I think it's better when I stay neutral, else it could get disastrous. But essentially, like, if my intention is to have a positive narrative in that memory box, which would be after, because the memory box is just as important as the think box. It's like, let's react positively to that shot, regardless of what the outcome was. Because at the end of the day, like, you got your think box right, and you pick your decision. You create that trust. You go to the transition box, create that clarity. Play box, execute, and then your memory box. Let's make put a good picture or word to that shot. So, for example, I like to say, if it's left, say, okay, just left, neutral reaction to outcome. Or if it's perfect. If it's right. If I didn't hit it the best, fat, thin, pured, and just labeling those and like creating a good relationship with your shots. And that's another skill you have to develop. So, yeah, I think that's huge there in terms of the memory box. What was the other thing you mentioned? Sorry, I forgot.
No, that was kind of it. Like I just wanted to dive into really, because it's almost like listen to the birds is actually listen to the birds, but it's also like a metaphor for something more than just listening to the birds.
I think it's a good metaphor for life, period. Like, just be present in the moment, and you don't know what's going to happen. And I've been very fortunate in my life, with many blessings. So, listening to the birds has been a good motto on the golf course and off the golf course, just to be grateful. Like, you're on the golf course, and like in competitive golf, at the end of the day, scores matter. But if you're going out there for a casual round, like, well, there's no need to get upset. Like, you're doing this because you want to enjoy it. Like, you're here for the camaraderie with the people and the fun and the thrill of it. And sure, shooting good scores is fun, but like, if you're in a better frame of mind and a better positive outlook, good reactions to outcomes, a good emotional state, you are going to perform that much better.
I think about like Scotty Scheffler as the perfect model for that. Like, he hits a ton of bad shots. He hits a ton of amazing shots, but like, it almost just looks like he doesn't internalize, like he doesn't beat himself up and berate himself. And it looks like he genuinely is enjoying himself out there. And I just feel like, I think that's a great approach. I mean, for me personally, like I can just share where I was coming from. Like as a kid, I had a temper. Like I grew up as a little kid, like, you know, you'd be beating yourself up. And somebody shared with us that the reason that we're expressing anger is because it's almost like an ego thing and we're almost embarrassed. And like expressing this form of anger shows other people that like, I'm displeased with that. Like you should know that I'm better than that shot. So I'm going to express this form of anger. So it's not a helpful emotion. Like unless you're Tiger Woods or John Rahm and you can dismiss that negative emotion in like 1 second, and those guys are just aliens. It's like most of us, if we get angry, we carry that into the next shot. So if you can do it, what you said, and just be objective and label it and just name it to tame it and then move on and be in a positive frame of mind for the next one, like we're going to bring our best self into that next shot.
Yeah, but again, that's a skill. So it's like easier said than done. And I've been working on this for, I'd say, a good like 3-4 years now. And like I'm still, there's no end. You're just continuously progressing and just developing my awareness and owning my process and being deliberate with this. And that's the thing. It's like train this in your practice. Like you hit a bad shot on the range. Don't say, well, fuck, what did I do there? Like just say, that's left, go back, take a breath, restart. And if you Google online the emotional energy scale, I think this is key. The emotional energy scale is essentially 20 emotions that you may or may not experience during a round of golf. And this is key. Coach Carter Carter Bennett, he gave me the emotional energy sheet. He first introduced me to it along with Jeff Overholt. And essentially, this is what happens in a classic round of golf for your let's call it your standard Saturday golfer, weekend golfer. You get to the first hole, you're experiencing that passion, the enthusiasm, the optimism, like let's go, I'm fired up to play with the boys today. Bang, make a bogey on one. All right, cool. You get to the second hole, you bogeyed again. Now all of a sudden you're getting to that curiosity. Why did I do that? Oh, why is it going right? So now you get impatient, right? So once you get impatient, now you're expecting things, and now you create that expectation. And as soon as you create that expectation, you're going to be frustrated when you're not reaching that expectation. Once you get frustrated, you're done. You're going to feel despair, anxiety, depressed. It's like, oh, now I just wasted another weekend. So like once we start to manage that and have awareness to that, and just like note what you're feeling, you're going to have a really good understanding of the emotional energy scale and perform how you like to.
That's a great, I mean, I've never heard of that scale, but I'm definitely going to be looking that up, dude. That's a great piece of feedback, I think. Yeah. And what I like too, man, about your approach, it's like you are very process based. You're very mindful and you're very process based. And it's like, I am not going to get down on myself out there. I'm just going to observe what's happening. I'm going to go through my process on every shot. And at the end of the day, I'm going to like add them up. Like, and I'm going to evaluate myself on how was my mindset, how was my process, and less so on like the exact result or outcome of the shot, because we play golf outside. Like you could hit a pure 7-iron and it could hit a sprinkler head and fly over the green. So if you're evaluating yourself on like purely outcome, you're going to be on a roller coaster ride of emotions all day.
Yeah, like a good thing to do there is like after every 3 holes, just like check where you're at. Like you don't even have to have the skill to say after every 3 holes, oh, how am I feeling? Oh, optimistic or frustrated or angry, patient, curious, just name it. And once creating that awareness is that huge first step.
I want to move on here, Buds, to your experience in the NCAA, and you're around some of golf's best amateurs on a pretty often basis. Give me something that you see NCAA players prioritizing that the average player may be overlooking.
I'd say the biggest thing is the amount of time spent on the greens, other players, and just really dialing it in, because you're pretty much using your putter every hole, right? So like dialing in 10 to 15 foot birdie putts or sometimes par saves. Like that's one of the biggest things there, I see. And nowadays, I'd say the physical aspect, like most college teams are in the gym most mornings, Monday, Wednesday, Friday sometimes, and just really taking good care of the body there. And it's tough when you're on the road to manage nutrition as well, but that's another thing. So it's other things, other variables off the golf course.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're seeing the NCAA guys spending more time practicing their putting and just working on their putting than the guys at your course at Markland.
Yeah, for sure. Like Markland, you just see like the average Joe just beating balls um, over there, just under the tunnel under Bloor Street, and then they'll finish their round, have a couple beers on the patio, and then drive home. Where like here, the guys who are at the top will play whether it's a good or bad round, and then they'll go back to the range and they'll work on what they got to work on.
Yeah, I think a good call out, because we're looking for simple things that people can put into play just in their average weekend round. And I think the nutrition piece you mentioned, like we've covered this with somebody else, having played pretty good level myself. Like when I'm playing tournaments, provincial tournaments, you don't see guys at the turn grabbing a hot dog and a pint or a Snickers bar and a Gatorade. Like these kind of high sugary foods or these like bloating foods. Like I think that's something that the better players may be aware of that the average person maybe isn't as focused on. Where like if you're rounding the turn, like grab something that like a banana and a protein bar, or some nuts or stuff that's like a little lower GI, that's gonna like, it's not gonna spike your blood sugar as much, and it's gonna allow you like to have sustained energy for the full round, because we're out there for 4 to 5 hours and like you're burning a lot of calories.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like last year, you would play like 36 holes straight, like no break, and you have your coach come around in a cart with. Do you know what Uncrustables are?
They're the sandwiches that are like cut without the crust, right?
Kind of, yeah. It's like they got the peanut butter and the jelly, or the
Okay.
whatever it is, and like that's like one of the snacks we have as a team. And the cart coach drives around Cliff Bars, um, the fruit Welshes, those things,
Okay. Yep.
real cookies. So it's like, yeah, it's unreal. Like they're good snacks on the course, but 36 holes in the morning, you're driving to McDonald's and you're crushing a couple egg McMuffins. Like by the time I get to the range, I'm starving still,
Yeah.
and it's not going to do much for the system. So it's again, it's what you have access to. Like when you're traveling at home, if you're playing a local GAO event and you got to travel 45 minutes up the road to the Blue Mountain to play the match play, it's a lot easier to go prepared and pack whatever you got to pack.
Jules, give me your thoughts here. If I could take you back to when you weren't as good a player, what advice would you give your former self to help expedite your improvement?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I'd probably say, ooh, that's a good one. I would probably say spend more time on the putting and chipping green, because like early on, I just loved hitting balls, and like early on, I would hit mindless golf balls all the time, and like all of us still do it today. Like you're tired one day and the intentionality is not there, you're just gonna hit mindless golf balls. And I think earlier on, like dialing in that short game, because like you're gonna need it every day. That would be one thing. Like spend more time dialing in like 50 yards and in.
Good takeaway. Oh, I liked it. And I can't hear that enough. Like, I can't hear good players say that enough. It's like, work on 50 yards and in, work on the wedges and the putter, work on the wedges and the putter. Like, it's just, you're like, it's rare that somebody hits all the greens and reg. Like you said, you're going to use your putter on every hole, and you're going to use your wedge on a lot of those holes. Like, they need to be.
Yeah. Like, I'm not sure if you've seen the video of Gary Player. He was talking to a group of 15 to 25 handicaps. And he said, if I play all your guys' shots from 100 yards and in, you guys would be single digits. But he was trying to get to the point where, like, you got to dial in that short game to improve and lower the scores. Like, that's from a 25 handicap to a 9, which would be a single digit. That's a lot of strokes. So think about how many strokes you're losing.
No kidding.
Well, like, how many times, sorry to interrupt, but how many times, like, at Lambton over there or at Markland, do you see, like, before the round, let's say you're teeing off at 8:45, guy gets to the course at 8:25, maybe hits a bunch of irons, bunch of drivers, and then just goes to the tee. Like, they don't putt, they don't chip. So
I'm even guilty of that myself. Like,
sometimes,
sometimes,
me too, like a trunk slam, and there you go.
But it's a good call out that if you come over in an evening to practice for an hour, like, let's make sure there's some time on the wedges and the putter. Like, that's what you're seeing the NCAA guys doing. That's what you would have told your younger self. Like, it's pretty, like, and I even think at the pro level, like, the guys hit the ball really well. Like, most of the guys hit the ball really solid. Now, the elite ball strikers, of course, they separate themselves, but I'd say like 80% of the guys hit the ball pretty similar. And it's like, they just separate with short game. Like, the better putters and chippers, like, just have longer careers and they just do better. Jules, give me one of the craziest or coolest things you've seen on the golf course.
The coolest or craziest things? I was playing with this guy, Matt Barry, a couple of years ago. And it was like, we played 9. No, we only played like 2 holes, but we did 8 and 9. And it was dark, and we're like, let's go back out and play. So there's like maybe 35, 40 minutes of sunlight left. First hole, guy pulls driver. And like, you couldn't see, after he hit the ball, you couldn't see it. He hits driver, and he nuked it. And I think I said, like, it's going in. But we couldn't see it, so we're all looking for it for like 5 minutes. I'm like, did anybody check the cup? So it was in the hole. So we had to
Come on.
Well, yeah, it was in the hole. Par 4 make that 1. We had to rush to finish because technically you need 9 holes to make it official. So, like, where he's driving the cart, I'm in the back chucking him clubs. This other guy was just hammered already. It's like the 3rd hole. He already had a cooler with him. 2 days later, I'm playing with him again. And the par 5 11 at Markland, he pulls 3-wood, or was it 3-iron? Something. I don't know what his number was, and then jars it for a 2.
Come on.
Yeah, it was insane. Absolute insanity.
Is this guy a stick, or is he just the luckiest guy on the face of the earth?
I think he'd be pretty happy if I called him a stick. But yeah, he can make the cut in the club championship. I'll give him that.
That's crazy, man. That's insane. Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts.
That's wow. You got to buy a lottery ticket that week, no doubt.
Yeah, it's wild.
Want to be mindful of your time here, buddy. I know we're coming up on time, but give me an area of your game that you're looking to improve and explain to us how you plan to get better in this area.
I'd say 2 things. Definitely my iron play and the low irons. Just like I think I miss a couple too many greens, and just like to dial in my iron play and proximity to the hole, because it's going to be a lot harder. It's a lot harder to make birdie putts from 15, 20 feet than it is from 6 feet when you're sticking them. So I think I just gotta get out there and get the practice going, work on my tempo, because I tend to get quick, and I think my hips get firing quick. So when I get my tempo dialed in, I think we'll be good to go there.
Love it. No, I mean, you're going to be an absolute threat when those irons get tuned up. That's going to be dangerous for the boys.
Yeah, we hope.
And last question here, buds. You've played in many high-pressure situations over the course of your playing career. What's one thing that you do that might help our listeners perform a bit better when they're nervous?
one thing I would say is like just take a deep breath and enjoy that moment and engage with that sensory experience like I was saying earlier. Because if you can engage with that, then you can slow the mind down. Like there was a study done, like the best performers in the world are the best breathers in the world, like the way they control their breathing, like the double pump through the nose. If you just read about that, like a double pump that like will slow down your rhythm there. So it sounds funny, but it does work.
Interesting. So you just give 2 inhales through the nose and then an exhale through the mouth to kind of get everything recentered?
Yes, sir. It's dialed. So I forgot who did the study. Oh, you know who it was? It was Andrew Huberman. He's a professor at Stanford in life
Okay.
sciences. And
He's the Huberman Lab guy.
yeah, Huberman Lab. Yeah. So
Okay.
that's what he was talking about. Like you do a quick and essentially like will help you get dialed in and slow down your heartbeat. Another thing it does like outside of golf is if you have like you ever get those like cramps in your abdomen,
Yeah.
like it's wild. It just clears it up instantly.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
that's one thing I would say in those situations, like take that deep breath and back yourself.
One thing too I've found, and you talked about the sensory experience, like when I'm in like a more pressure situation, I found it's easy for like negative thought patterns to jump into my head. Like, don't do this. There's trouble on the left. Don't go there. Like I'm not thinking that intentionally, but it's easy for those things to creep in. And so routine for me, I know has been a huge one. Just like, I'm just going to focus on really going through my process. And then the second one is when I'm behind the ball, this is more the sensory piece. I'll just ask myself, what's my target? And I'll just reaffirm like, this is my target. And I try to get even more target focused, because if I'm focused on the target, I'm not focused on the water, or I'm not focused on the out of bounds. And the more I can like connect, like you said, like really connect with that target, the less room I have for thoughts of like what could go wrong to jump in.
Absolutely. I think just controlling your controllables, like it's going to be hard to keep those thoughts from coming away. Like I know when Carter won his club championship, like on the 11th hole, he was telling me how he had memories of a shank he hit when he was like 10. Like 20 years later, that's coming back. So, like you said, Matt, I think that's a good one too. Like sticking to the process, trust yourself, and just swing free. Like take that double pump deep breath.
I love it, man. Well, there's been so much good stuff here, Jules. I can't thank you enough for coming on, brother, and letting us sort of pick your brain, and wishing you all the best. Looking forward to seeing you in the city when you're back in town.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Cam.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Behind the Brim. We'll be releasing podcasts every Monday. And if you want more golf content, follow us on social at behindthebrim_golf on both Instagram and TikTok. Hope you have a great week.